Something extraordinary is coming. My memoir, The Hospitality Leader's Roadmap, Move from Ordinary to Extraordinary, launches on October 15th on Amazon. This book shares my journey from a 15-year-old line cook to seasoned leader in the hospitality industry, packed with insights on leadership, resilience, and transformation. Whether you're an aspiring leader or a seasoned professional, you'll find practical wisdom and inspiration to elevate your career. Mark your calendars, and remember, 10% of sales from October 15th until the end of 2024 will benefit Chow. Grab your copy on Amazon.com on Tuesday, October 15th.
The secret to my success as a coach is that I help others identify blind spots in their life and recognize patterns of behavior that are stopping them from getting what they want and being more successful. Join me for this powerful coaching conversation with my friend Christopher McFadden as he uncovers patterns of behavior that are holding him back and makes some commitments on the path that he wants to create for his future success with his company, the McFadden Group.
Welcome to the No Hesitations podcast, the show where restaurant leaders learn tools, tactics, and habits from the world's greatest operators. I'm your host, Kristen Marvin, with Solutions by Kristen. I've spent the last 2 decades in the restaurant industry and now partner with restaurant owners to develop their leaders and scale their businesses without wasting time and energy so they can achieve work-life balance and make more money. You can now engage with me on the show and share topics you'd like to hear about, leadership lessons you want to learn, and any feedback that you have. Simply click the link at the top of the show notes, and I'll give you a shout out on a future episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting. Christopher, what's going on in your neck of the woods today?
Autumn is in the air. Oh, cool. It's so nice. We shut the air conditioning off today. We have windows open.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Season and it's cozy. And it's funny because I was wearing a sweater yesterday and my students were like, "Are you cold?" I was like, "Cozy." 2 totally different things.
Yeah, I love that. It's still 106 here today.
You know what's funny is that when we look there we go. Okay. I think it's amazing. When we lived in Vancouver, you would just have summer and then the next day was just fall. And we're starting to see that in Ontario, which is super crazy. When I lived in Ontario when I was a kid, it was just always just hot and then just cold. You didn't really have a lot of in-betweens except for moments through spring and fall. But it's nice to be back going through our second fall here now.
I love it. That's good. I love it. You can tell the air is just getting a little bit cooler here at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is when I get out with the pups. You have to before the heat comes in. So awesome. This last week, a couple of us in town are like, "Oh, can you feel it? It's coming. It's September and October. We'll be here before we know it." So it looks like we've got a few people on, which is amazing. We're going to go ahead and jump in here. Welcome to everybody that's joining us for this live coaching session. Super, super excited to have you here with us today. My name is Kristen Marvin. I am a restaurant coach. I help restaurant owners and leaders overcome their biggest challenges so they can spend their time and energy where it matters most. And I'm grateful to have my guest with me today, Christopher McFadden. Would you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Christopher McFadden. I own a company called the McFadden Group, where I do career coaching for restaurant and hospitality professionals, but focused on an exploration through core values, emotional intelligence, and leadership development. And then also I'm a college professor at Fanshaw's Toronto campus in hospitality. And I teach food and beverage operations all the way up to leadership, ethics, and diversity with a smorgasbord of things in between.
Love it. Core values, emotional intelligence, leadership development. We're speaking the same language. That's amazing. Super excited. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to jump right into the session. Is there anything that you need from me or anything you want me to know before we get started?
No, I'm incredibly comfortable. Thank you.
Okay. Not sure what's come before this or what's going to come after this, but would just invite you to take a deep breath and get present in the moment if you need one.
Beautiful.
Okay. Do I have your permission to coach you today?
You do.
Okay, fantastic. What's your biggest challenge right now?
You know, It was, I think, truly defining my niche in what I was trying to accomplish in this next stage of my life in hospitality. I knew leaving restaurants in 2022 officially that I needed to make a shift and do something different. But within the space that I've always known, it's been 25 years that I was in restaurants. So when I first launched my company, it was expanding from Restaurant Leadership 101 course that my dear friend and business partner Edwin Kumar and I had launched 2 years ago. And it was an extension of that. And it was great because I was talking to Jim Taylor one day from Benchmark 60, and he goes, "You got to find your niche." And my whole target was teaching soft skills to develop hard skills in restaurant professionals. And as much as the conversation is much more active now, it was just really recently that I realized how much more I was doing with career coaching, with focusing on soft skills, and tailoring what I was doing now to a tighter framed market. And that I was more excited about the budding leaders that are in our industry and the ones that are up and coming into the ones that have just started in the leadership journey. So I feel like today I'm in more of a comfortable level with my brand because I've started filtering out the things that didn't work. So as great as that is, I still think the biggest struggle out there is letting people know that restaurant coaching is available. I know this market has existed in a lot of other business sectors, but I find hospitality is that one area that, as niche as it is a little bit of a push to let people know that you're there to help, and that's exactly what it is. So I think it's just getting my voice out there, and now that I'm tailoring exactly what I'm doing specifically with a career coaching focus through emotional intelligence and core values, I think the struggle will slow down a little bit as I'm starting to work with clients specifically in that area.
What's that experience been like for you to have to push that information out to potential clients?
I'm super extroverted in my life, so I love conversation around our industry in general. I love talking about hospitality. I think it's the greatest thing that exists. Everybody has to eat somewhere, and I love being a part of that moment with guests. But I love more so now being a part of the teams that take care of guests to help develop them. It's neat to watch it happen, and it's neat to watch people listen and understand what I'm talking about, or understand at least the topic, and then go, "Oh, can we have some more?" And it's been a very neat moment to watch. Very neat moment to watch. It's the conversation of this and letting people know that a big thing, that mental health's an okay conversation to have. You and I have talked about that quite significantly, and we're talking about it in restaurants now, and we're trying to find the better light of everybody as individuals, to find them as a better light as a team itself. And so I think the conversation's been good so far, with people going, "Huh, that's new. That sounds exciting. That sounds interesting."
I love when you were talking about your love for hospitality, your words sped up and your energy immediately shifted. You can tell that you really love this topic to your core.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I think it's just such a great business. I made a joke when I was just getting into restaurants when I was 18. Which is 26 years ago now. But I made a joke where I was like, we'll never need robots in this industry. It's a human-based business. And funny enough, a few months ago, Eastside Mario's, I had a robot drop off my food to me, and I was like, I could have had that. But I think we're doing. I'll use some of my students as a highlight. I've got postgraduate students that are doing their graduate studies now with Fanshawe, and this 25 to 26-year-olds age group they're starting to really think about, now that we've had this conversation in light of self-awareness is a big, huge part of what we had to become more aware of. It's neat now to watch these 25 and 26-year-olds students, people, leaders in hospitality, start seeing past the technology that's existed and more understanding that as much as innovation with AI and so forth are happening, how important the people side of what we're doing is, and that it's not being forgotten. And I think it's being fired up now. with this age group that's coming in and going, we can do better for people in conversation because we can do better for ourselves and we can do better for our teams. And I think it's going to create a stronger hospitality side of things again, because we're going to slow down on how much more, not necessarily slow down, but I think we're going to pay more attention to the people again, instead of so much as the technology progressing as fast as it has.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're saying is that the people that you're engaging with see a need for this and they're really engaged in the conversation. They want to know more. They're interested in what you're doing. There's an interest in investing in themselves, or you're sparking a curiosity about possibilities that they may not have known about. Where's the gap? Yeah, where's the gap between them being excited about the conversation and then actually wanting to invest?
I think the gap's slowly filling, and it's because of this next age group that's coming into the business very strongly. I think there was a gap between, you know what, it was funny because Edwin and I had this conversation with Restaurant Leadership 101 was, this divide between the old guard and the new guards coming in and these two different ways of thinking. And it was about putting them on the same page by letting them know that the conversation of themselves was a good conversation to have, and that we could pull more out. And instead of just, and this is what I'm doing in the career coaching, is that instead of separating people just because I've got 20 resumes in front of me, who am I going after? I think the spark recently has happened when I said to my students, I'm like, where's your cover letter? And they're like, what? And I was like, where's your cover letter? And I said, think of your cover letter as your soft skills and your resume as your hard skills. I said, the first paragraph in the chapter of a book is the most important part to make you want to flip the page. So I said this, being a sommelier, I said that when I was building wine programs, people were like, oh, the By the Glass program is probably super easy to do. I'm like, that's the hardest thing to do. The rest of the 37-page book's an easy thing to put together if you know what you're going after for your frame of mind. So I want people to flip the page, right? But don't just give me one page to let me find out more about you, right? Tell me a story. Tell me about you, right? Make me interested. And at least if I flip the page and I see your resume's blah, right? Doesn't have enough to it. I go back to the first page and go, well, they just seem like the right person to meet. We can train them to do the job. Let's just help get them in the door to start the conversation with them. And I think there's more evidence in this conversation happening now about sell yourself, right? The position's an easy thing to fill, but I think restaurant professionals are getting better by choosing the person and not just the position itself.
It's interesting what you said about the old guard versus the new guard and them both being on the same page, and this wine list concept of the by the glass and the by the bottle. How can you use that metaphor of a wine list to compare kind of what's going on in the industry right now?
I live just outside Toronto. I'm in Burlington, Ontario, and it's a very suburban city. Servers that work here ended up in hospitality just because it was convenient for money. And the shift between just the suburban community and the big city community, big difference that I'm seeing is, at least in the suburban community, people are holding onto their jobs. There's a reflective point that I think is happening in the industry where it's like, we still have really good people in this business, and we have some really good new people coming into the business and into the industry. I think there's an excitement to it that's existing. I think hospitality deserves the best. And I think we're getting back out of COVID. We still keep saying it, it's 4 years now, right? That, we're still getting back out of it, right? But there's less restaurants that have sections not filled, having sections closed. There's more conversation about opportunities that are out there, as much as the struggle still exists within hospitality to being full, if you will. I think we're in a better position in the next 2 years to start seeing some strength happen in this business, because we're starting to bring some new minds into the way the industry needs to shift and think. When I was at a restaurant as a GM, I remember one night where I had two 17-year-old server assistants that just left the floor. And I was like, where are you going? And they're like, oh, we're just going to go have a bite to eat. And I was like, there's 150 people in a restaurant right now. Oh my goodness. I was like, okay, let's figure it out. This new way of this shifted I think, a misunderstanding of the grind that we put into this industry. And I think it's quite neat to have this younger generation come in to say, hey, hold on, wait a minute. There's got to be a little bit more reality to what we're doing. And I think we're going to create better guest experience by the fact that we're creating better teammates on our crews that make a way different way of, instead of, hey, great, thanks for the 14-hour day, here's a beer, but more of the closing of a shift with, how'd you feel today? How did you feel your work was, right? I mean, our perspective's changing. That's allowing this to have a new entity to what hospitality really looks like.
Hi, everybody. We're taking a quick break to offer you an exciting opportunity. If you're a restaurant owner or manager looking to enhance your leadership skills, I invite you to join my 12-day leadership challenge. In just 12 days, you'll receive a guided packet with actionable strategies to transform your leadership in less than 5 minutes a day. Join the challenge and the community and grab your copy at kristenmarvin.com/12 days. Now let's get back to the show.
Howdy, listener. Are you also a podcaster seeking to stand out in the crowded audio landscape? I'm here to help. L. Connor Voice, LLC offers top-tier audio engineering, meticulous content management, and more, all tailored to save you time and elevate your podcast to new heights of professionalism. With L. Connor Voice, you can focus on what you do best, creating captivating content, while I handle the rest. Say goodbye to hours spent tweaking audio levels and managing uploads. I ensure your podcast shines with polished sound quality and seamless delivery. Ready to take your podcast to the next level? Contact L. Connor Voice, LLC today and make producing your podcast as easy as hitting record. For more information, go to lconnorvoice.com. Links are in the episode notes.
Yeah, it feels like the old guard, when I'm listening to your talk, is like the wines by the bottle, the staples that are on the menu. They don't move around a lot. They've been there for a while. And then you've got the new guard coming in. That's like the wines by the glass, constantly in motion, exciting, right? How do you, what comes up for you when I say that?
Well, it reminds me of Corvin. When Corvin came out, I was one of the first restaurants to officially launch a program. I was blessed. I met Josh Maykower, one of the co-founders of Corvin, at a restaurant that I was running. And he signed a bottle for me. And I was like, this is like Santa Claus just arrived. It was new. It was fancy. And I got to a point where I was pouring Screaming Eagle Cabernet by the glass for $750 a glass. Because it was new and fun and creative. And it was like, how far can we push the element with this? And how far can we go? So yeah, this new guard is like the Corvin system when it first launched. And I think we have a great chance to hold on to this idea that new insights and new thoughts and new foundations and new beliefs from the new guard coming in is going to get hospitality exciting again and not make people feel like they just go to work and this is all I do. I guess I'll be in a good mood today because I have to. I think the new guards are going to enlighten this industry again. And they want to. It's not just a have to. They want to be in this business. They want to be in this industry. And I think we have an incredibly blessed situation with the amount of international students that we have coming in that are in hospitality to drive this force as well, because it's brand new for them when they're coming into Canada. But I think there's a new energy that exists with the next new guards that are coming into line.
Yeah. What was the purpose of the Corvin?
It all started for two gentlemen that their wives were pregnant and they wanted to figure out a way that they could enjoy some of their wines without ever pulling a cork on the bottle. So the Corvin device clamped to the neck of a bottle. A needle went through the cork, and then you extracted the juice with argon gas. And the argon gas actually replaced the oxygen that was now in that bottle. So it protected the wine, but it was completely inert to wine having any flaw in it. And natural cork goes back to seal itself. So when you have that happening, and now they've got sparkling wines happening now, And screw caps are now happening for that as well. But I think watching that progression, they started at this point, and I think this is exactly what we're looking at with the next generation of restaurant leaders and hospitality leaders as a whole. This is that starting point of just simply creating this new place and this new energy. And then the development is happening, and my company's helping them get there. And it's exciting in the conversations that I have, because the discovery point, when you see their head tilt and go, huh, I'm like, yeah, okay, good. All right, let's dive in even deeper now.
Yeah, I love that. The Corvin was there to protect and preserve, right?
That was it, right? And I think we have such a beauty of this in our industry, but throughout it, I think a big thing, Canadian kids got scared of COVID, and the industry became unsafe. And I think that shifted a lot of bodies in the business that was just filled, right? Resumes were just coming in the door all the time, right? And now the conversation is don't just be the next resume, right? Be the next, be that next person, right? Sell yourself, right? Be you and drive yourself into what you want. And however I can help you get there, I will. But I want you to look at this in a new energy and a new perspective, because it's not just about filling out the simple details that are supposed to sell yourself to somebody. Tell a story. All of us have one. All of us do. And I think it's more magical now that people are asking what your story is. And I think all of us should be proud of what ours is. And we all have something in our lives. We all went through stuff. I was foolish in a lot of points and a lot of choices in my life. But I became more self-aware to fix that. And it took 2 years of a deep study of emotional intelligence and leadership to find it in myself, to now share it with the industry and the profession that exists out there. But being more a part of others' journey is explosive. It's very cool. It's a very cool thing.
Yeah, it sounds like everything that you've learned and all the self-awareness that you've created, you want to kind of be that Corvin for them and protect them, but also show them a path that's going to preserve them in the industry.
Absolutely. And I say this to my students. The semester just wrapped up. It's wrapping up this week officially, but yesterday was my last official classes. And I said to all of them, I'm like, 6 years from now, if you have an issue, just reach out, right? The last thing I want to do is be the guy that just stops teaching you in college and then not have you know that I'm there tomorrow or the next day or the day after that or whatever it may be. But when you get into moments through hospitality that make you go, oh, what do I do? Right? Know that the source is out there for conversation on it. But it's an okay thing to say, hey, I need help. Because I had to do that. And it took a lot for me to admit that. Not without ego by any means, but just there's a pride level. And I think that exists in hospitality. But I think we can all do better the more that we become aware of needing to do better. And I had to do that for myself. And I had to do that for my family and friends.
What was that experience like for you when you finally allowed yourself to ask for help?
Oh, relaxing. What a difference. Like I slept better that night. The anxiety shifts. It's a different kind of anxiety, right? Because now you feel there's just a sense of goodness that comes over you. And when you realize that you got to dive deep into pulling more out of yourself to put the puzzle back together, if you will. Because there was a lot of separated pieces, and it caused for depression and it caused for a spike in anxiety. But the more you unpack, I've always been one that just pushes things down and goes, you know what, whatever, I'll get to that. And 3 years ago, everything came out at once, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do with this? I unpacked everything at once because I had to. It happened completely organically based upon my wife going through adoption. But when it did, and it was funny because it came out as I was doing something not related to the industry. It came out when it was fully propagated by what was happening in my life, that I had to unpack all of this stuff. And unpacking all of that allowed me to unpack things professionally, that I could put the two together and realize that both situations were completely personal. Right? One was much more behaviorally built, which was my profession. and all of the innateness that existed in me that I had to unpack, everything that was already in me, that was mine. Yeah, the work to admit it took a moment, because I always just thought I could be a rock and be okay. And I wasn't. It caused issues in my partnerships, in relationships. My wife is the greatest human being I know. We've been together 19 years this year, and she's she's pushed through my behavior with alcohol, and pushed through standing beside me, through everything. Yeah, and when I started understanding that I had to unpack it, I did it all at once, and then I just laid it on the table. I had Post-it notes up where I was like, okay, great, I can take that one down, I can take this one down, and it was magical, absolutely magical. But I think it takes a lot to find it.
Yeah, it sounds like you shifted your focus a little bit, and then it created space for this. The image that comes to mind for me is the suitcase to explode and the clothes start to kind of fly everywhere.
And I'm super blessed for Edwin Kumar. Edwin and I have known each other since 2015, when I interviewed with him, and we became good friends. And then we connected at a time when both of us, not even having to highlight both of us where we were at, but I believe timing is everything in this world. I believe things show up when they're supposed to. I believe things show up when you least expect them, or when you least try to find them. And Edwin and I sat down, and the conversation was, let's do something different for hospitality. I had this idea. And he was helping me shift my perspective and how I was looking at hospitality. And it took 10 months to write Restaurant Leadership 101. It took a while. And when we did it with just authority and passion and excitement and perseverance to being a different conversation out there. I'm super blessed to have Edwin as a dear friend, and as a mentor, because he was the one that said, hey, you don't need to be doing the grind on the floor anymore. You could be doing the grind in a different direction. So yeah, it was that moment that I could start unpacking. But the one big thing that I forgot about having to truly look after was, I lived in Vancouver. I lived in Western Canada for almost 20 years. My wife and I packed up after 18 years of living out west, 17 years of living out west, and packed up and moved back to my home city that I never thought I would do, because I had to pivot to whatever I was doing to focus on my family first. And when you're trying to focus on your family first, 4,000 kilometers away, the reality is it's not as evident that you're doing it, as now doing it with my dad, an 8-minute drive up the road, and my mom, a 20-minute drive down the road, and my grandmother, a 30-minute drive down the road. I had to realign what my values were, and family has always been first for me. But living that far away, I had my own disconnect that I wasn't aware of enough, until it took me down a hole. And then this fire that Edwin put into me allowed for the McFadden Group to grow, and now for the McFadden Group to reintroduce itself as restaurant and hospitality career coaching, with the focus of not just the business, the resume side to it, but on the personal side of it. Yeah, again, it's all connected. Yeah, it's all connected again. But I'm super thankful for Edwin being my mentor through this journey, because he's opened my eyes to a lot of things and a lot of reality. And the two of us spent 55 years in restaurants combined. So we both come from the exact same space. And now we're going into the same conversational space. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, it sounds like he's an ally for you.
Love him to death. Yeah.
Say more about that fire.
It's funny. I think in restaurants, I'll share something super transparent here. So for anybody out there that feels like you have these symptoms, it's okay to talk about this. So I think in restaurants, we always blame our attention span on, I probably have ADHD, or I probably have OCD, or right, whatever. I just kind of park it and maneuver. I said to my wife about a month and a half ago, I said, I'm going to go chat with the doctor. I need to keep my focus in line. I've always been one that likes to start new journeys as I'm in one journey. because I go, oh, you know what? I could probably crush that right now. Oh, I could probably do this right now. So I went through this conversation with my doctor and I said, let me put it to you this way. The reason why I'm here. At 10 a.m. this morning, I was able to get an appointment with you at 12. I was grading student papers, realized how big my rubric was for this, and that there was no way I was going to be able to complete that by the time I got to my appointment with you. But realized that I had another class where I had a smaller grading rubric that I could probably crush those 19 papers before I got to my appointment with you. And she goes, and how did that go? I said, I crushed those 19 papers. And she goes, and did that feel good? I said, I need validity in my day. If I'm going to start something, I need to know that I can complete it. I don't like going to bed at night knowing I have more to do from yesterday. And she goes, okay, right? And so we had this conversation about ADHD, and she goes, if I was to ask you to go get a bag of milk, how would that look? I said, in what perspective? She said, would you be able to find your keys? I said, yeah. She goes, but if you had, let's say, cash sitting on the table, would you go, I could probably drop that off at the bank on my way to the grocery store. And then when you get to the bank, you look across the street and there's a Shoppers Drug Mart that you're probably just going to pop into because you can grab something there. But by the time you get to the grocery store, you forget why you went there. I was like, absolutely. I said, then I text Joanne and say, hey, why am I at Tortitas? And she goes, because you needed milk. I'm like, okay, great. She goes, okay, we can work with this, right? So I got diagnosed with a pretty mild to medium version of executive OCD. She goes, you're incredibly organized, but you need to keep yourself organized in one folder. And I was like, great, this is a great liftoff point. Like this, now I understand how I need to get there. So yeah, I had a true transparency about a month and a half ago where I realized that I needed to keep myself in one tunnel at a time. And I'm accomplishing more now because I'm staying in one path and not letting the road split. If the road does split, I'm able to get myself, backwards from that road if I took the wrong path. But I had to come to some honesty with myself to go, I need to rebalance again. And how am I going to do this? So yeah, I went and asked for help again. I was like, hey, doc, I need to have a conversation. And it's a beautiful thing, right? And it's amazing how many people have come out of the woodwork now that I have admitted, an ADHD factor in my life. But the number of people that have come up to me and said, thank you. And I'm like, what? They're like, I'm exactly the same. I'm like, great, good for you. I even do this on the first day of class. I'm like, okay, quick question. Who's an overthinker? You get students that don't know what to do. And I'm like, I'll start. I'll put my hand up. And slowly but surely you get hands put up. Or I do this with teams in a restaurant. I'm like, who overthinks? And you get these hands that slowly go up. I'm like, great. Isn't it nice to know that you're not the only one? And they're like, what? I'm like, look, 17 of you in this room, 12 of you put your hand up. Great. What a great starting point of a conversation. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to admit it. It's okay to find that you're not the only one. If you're introverted, great. Right? You can still be an incredible hospitality leader and hospitality professional. Right? Just you'll find your shell time to come out of when you're ready. That's okay, right? But be introverted, be extroverted, be as fiery as you want to be. I just love the moment when I get a chance to meet new people. I had a student my wife did a guest speaker conversation at my class, and she's super introverted. And this student wrote in the paper that he had to do, he said, would your business be as successful today if Christopher was introverted? And I was like, this is a 19-year-old undergrad kid in his second semester. And I'm like, that's the thinking I'm looking for. What a beautiful comment. What a beautiful question. And Joe was like, And I said, it's funny. It's that perfect yin and yang balance with my wife and I, where I'm super out of the box. And when she comes out of the box, I help her with that because it's new for her to do. So I love opening the conversation to people and know that it's a safe conversation and that people will find more in themselves when they start unpacking more of themselves. And if it's a simple conversation of handling how you overthink, great. That's an amazing place to start because things just start coming out of you, and it makes it much easier to look after.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
see a pattern already in this conversation of you asking for help and then immediately getting some relaxation and some focus.
What a difference. It's so, it's beautiful. It changes things when you realize that it's okay to talk about it. To all of you watching, it's okay. Talk about it, right? Like, just have a conversation. Whether it's a conversation with yourself in a mirror to start unpacking it, then do it. But it's okay, right? It's a good thing. And you'll find so much more within yourself when you start getting to know yourself more.
What's important about this time for you right now?
Oh, I'm exploring way more. I'm going further into a study on leadership. Um, I become more aware. I've always been very aware of my surroundings, but I'm becoming more aware of it now because I don't look at it as the guy running a restaurant. I look at it as a guy helping a restaurant. So my attention that I pay is different. I try to find new things that grab a hold of my interest, or new ways of looking at things that I had once done, and start not contradicting what I had done, but starting to understand and see more ideas behind how I could have maybe done that differently if I was back into a GM role today in a restaurant. There's so much more out there to find, and I've become more interested in finding it than I have just sitting back and waiting for it to pop in, if you will. As much as I believe timing is everything, I believe a lot of stuff, if you want timing to show up, you have to put some work into it. And a big thing for me in the last year was, going after coaching certifications in hospitality leadership, addiction and recovery, and emotional intelligence. So it was that starting point that allowed me to really kind of relaunch, because I got super, super invigorated again by watching students continue to learn, me continuing to teach students. And it was a moment in there where I went, I need to go back and learn more as well. And I dove into it. And now it's a self-exploration. And I'm very lucky when I've got very heavy self-reflection assignments that I introduce my students to, or storytelling assignments, that reading other people's stories as well is exciting. It's so neat to grow from real moments in people's lives versus going to find a story of somebody that I don't know of. And as I'm getting to know people, and as I'm getting to know new restaurant professionals, when they start telling their story, it lightens. It adds an enlightening factor to what I'm doing, because I grab it and go, never done that or never seen that. Great, let's go find more about it. Yeah, it's an educational journey for sure.
What do you want to get out of this exploration? What's at the end of the journey for you?
I want to study psychology. I'm super into the human being right now. I made a comment to my wife a few weeks ago. I said, I want to go do my degree. And she was like, what? I was like, I want to go study psychology. And she was like, wow. And I said, and even if I decide not to go to university, right, but I know what is next for me. And it's more understanding of our innate and behavioral traits that create us to be who we are. I think that I would do a deep thesis study on something like that. Because I absolutely introduced the idea that leadership is born within all of us. It's there. It just takes a lot longer for some of us to realize it's there, a lot longer for some of us to decide whether or not we want to grab and go with it. But I think we're in a very good position today. And you know what? It always happened. I think there's lead servers, there's lead hostesses, there's lead bartenders without being in management roles. And I'm much more prone to having that conversation with everybody to go, you don't need to be running the business. Like, if you don't want to go and be the GM, don't. Lead for what you do as an individual, right? Have that inspiration around the people that are working with you. So I think more of this, I want to pull more out of people to see more of themselves, and then to be able to help control the behavioral factors that are either going to really shrink that for them, or help extend how they're going to grow in leadership.
What do you want to help them do?
I want to see restaurants run with just heart and soul. I want to see way more advocacy for taking care of the people that work for you than just taking care of the customer. I want the message to be very clear that you can't have customers unless you have staff. So yeah, let's start there. And I did this through COVID at Piva. I mentioned this in a conversation the other day was, when my staff came back, I'm like, okay, so you're first to the table, right? Like, you're the number one people that we need, because if people are going to come in and not play by our rules to keep you safe, then they can go somewhere else. And we built a strong foundation out of this idea. And then it was the 2.5 years after that I realized I should have started with myself in that journey before I started diving more attention to everybody else. Because if I wasn't at my best, and they were, then there's still a problem in the team itself. Is that if I'm not at my best, then they can't be at their best. And if I'm going to help them get to their best, then I should certainly be doing that for myself first. So I became a better leader with what I'm doing today, I think, because I'm so much more self-aware that it should have all started with myself. And not as big of an exploration necessarily, but enough so that, and my wife's always said that, she goes, you always take care of others, right? Take care of you first. And it was that powerful reminder. So for me, I really want to see happy faces everywhere I go when I walk into restaurants. I want to know that somebody wants to be there and doesn't have to be there. And I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of people exploring that and realize how incredible hospitality is, and that it is so proactively the reason why we're human beings, right? We're in the people business. We just happen to serve food and beverage. And I think we need to pay more attention to that component, that the food and beverage is part of the people part of what we do. And I want to be an advocate of conversation for that.
Yeah, it sounds like they say sometimes that we're the best at teaching what we still need to learn. And it sounds like you created a really strong foundation for them during the pandemic. And then you realized that you needed to build that foundation for yourself. So there's a little bit more balance now, but you are wanting to continue your own journey while going on the journey with them too, so that you're both continuing to elevate.
Very much so, right? Come on the path, just hop in, right? Hop on the bus. Right, we used to always say this in restaurants, right? Everybody's got to be on the same bus going the same way. Get rid of the people that aren't on that bus, right? More honesty and transparency in what needs to go and what needs to come in. And I think we're in an incredible position in today's conversations by all of us that are setting this leadership conversation tone, is that our companies and our conversations with what we're doing and what we're doing here, is way more prevalently in the conversation, because we're talking about it now. Before, we just went to work. And as much as it's a great business, and I loved going to work, pardon me, I loved going to work. But all of that stuff where you're like, I don't bring outside problems with me. Of course you do. You're a human being, right? It's just, it shifts who you are. Right? I've always been one that you can tell exactly how I feel based upon what my facial expressions are. I used to have a ton of hair. It just went straight up. And my wife used to make fun of me when we worked together. She goes, your hair's getting taller. I was like, what? She goes, are you stressed? And I'm like, what? She goes, you can tell. You can just tell. So I think there's more of an awareness of the reality of what we're doing in restaurants, but I think we're starting to see happier people in them, because they're aware of people like ourselves that are trying to strengthen them as individuals.
What does success look like for you in this role?
In this awareness journey, and as I've said, I need to see validity in my day and know that there needs to be accomplishments. I've started becoming more pros and cons, not pros and cons necessarily, and I don't want to use cons as a bad word here. more of the what do I miss, what do I not miss aspect of things, instead of it being a pro and a con, going, okay, well, this made sense, but I missed this, right? Is that, or this was a negative in my life. I think for me, I'm paying more attention to the positivity of my journey and being able to start moving away the negativity that I've had in it. Because when I'm more grateful and thankful for what's in front of me, than questioning what was behind me. That's a big thing. We always worry about what people think of us, I think. Whether we admit it or not, I think it's just a human being capacity that we just all hope that we're doing well. I love being liked. Now it doesn't bother me if I'm not anymore. So success for me is being able to have my positives in my day always outweigh my negatives.
It's interesting because you said pros and cons, and you said wins and misses.
Yeah.
Which sounds like both of those are polar extremes, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder what's in the middle for you.
Yeah. I always want my pluses in my days to outweigh my negatives. But I'm much more aware of when a negative shows up, that I park it as something that I can either work on in the moment or start to think it out of the moment and then set myself up a goal for being able to turn that negative into a positive. I did an analysis for a class where they had already known what a SWOT analysis was. And I said, so for your assignment, instead of comparing 2 hotel companies and then writing your own for building a hotel, I want you to write a SWOT analysis on yourself. And they said, what? And I said, I want you to dive into yourself and find your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. And I watched 29 students sit there. And I said, find some humble pie. You'll be amazed when all of a sudden you figure this out today. And then 3 months from now, you look at it again. 9 months from now, you look at it again. And you start watching where you've grown. After I wrote that assignment, I did it myself, so that I can now be more aware very clearly of where opportunities are more. And I had a student say it. She goes, I look at my opportunities or my threats as challenges. And I was like, great, right? She goes, it's not a threat, right? That's ridiculous. She goes, but everything should be an opportunity. So I did it myself so that I could have it in my office and look at it in the mornings to go, okay, where am I at today? So I think for me, success is knowing when I've got a full hold of that, and that when a negative moment shows up, is how can I grab it and not let it suck that energy out of me, but rather try to find an opportunity for it to create a positive moment for me, and a learning moment for me. So I think success for me is when I have complete control over my cons, if you will.
What'd you do in the restaurant business when you had a bad shift?
Well, being a sommelier, right? I would taste wine, right? That was it. I would taste wine. I would separate myself from the conversation. I started tasting again when I shouldn't have. It's been 7.5 years since I've had a sip of hard alcoholic beer. It's almost 2 full years from tasting wine. And I was using it as a distraction again, and not doing it to get lit up, but doing it because it allowed me just to separate everything I was going through.
Yeah, it sounds like you were avoiding it.
I was avoiding it, right? That was it. And I felt disconnected. And I was doing it because I started writing tasting notes again, like I was in sommelier training again. Like I was doing what I was doing when I was 21. And I started writing tasting notes again. And it got to a point where my wife's like, what are you doing? And I was like, and what I really needed to do was back myself up from the industry directly, and that I had to make a change. My wife makes a joke every once in a while. She's like, when I applied for the college professor role, I didn't tell her what I applied for. She tapped me on the knee and she's like, I thought we left restaurants, Christopher. And I was like, yeah, we did. I'm going a different direction with hospitality. And that it's time to do this in a different way. It's time to get people from the ground up in the educational side of it. And that how could I take the educational side that I've been doing and work it into the coaching side with people that are already in the business or those that are looking at growing into it or growing up within it. So my spectrum changed. But yeah, and I wasn't tasting every day. But definitely when there was bad shifts, it was a stupid direction that I went. But I didn't know it was a stupid direction until after I, had quit drinking. As a
What else were you? Yeah, let's reframe this for a second. When you went back to those tasting notes and started tasting again, what else were you doing besides distracting yourself?
Handling depression.
What else?
Maybe I was just looking for that youth in me, if you will. Right, when it was okay and it wasn't, it didn't become a problem for me. And you know what? Maybe it was a challenge of myself going, could I do that again? Could I do that? Am I safe to do that? And I think it was that challenge. Yeah, that's exactly. I thought I was okay. And I wasn't. I wasn't. The reality is that I was an alcoholic. And I didn't admit that because I was a sommelier and wine's a part of your day.
There's aspect to this though that's interesting where and I can tell like you keep going back to the negative, to the negative, to negative, right? When you go back to the tasting notes and you go back to tasting again, there's an element of re-education there. You're taking yourself, and maybe I'm off base here, so tell me that, but me studying wine and my husband studying wine, I know exactly what that's like, right? And it's taking me back to those moments where that education was so exciting and that learning was so challenging and it was so robust and it was fulfilling. That's where your passion lied. It was comfortable for you.
It's the educational side to it. That's a good point. Not even a good point. That's a relevant conversation. I got more excited again when I was doing blind tastings for my staff or for friends, where I shifted how I was doing it. I used to play this game called What Is It Not? And I put down 3 glasses in front of a friend of mine doing his sommelier training. Rhett, if you're listening, you know exactly who I'm talking to here. And I put down 3 glasses of wine for him. And I was like, okay, I just got a whole new allotment of stuff in. And that was my educational thing, was bringing in new things that were creative and funky and out of the box and just exciting. And I would put 3 glasses in front of him and he would start smelling and start looking at the wine. And he's like, well, I think it's, and I'm like, what is it not? Start your tasting notes in a different way. I do this with students. I'm like, when you look at multiple choice, eliminate what the answer is not. Stop looking for the right answer. Start thinking out how you're going to get to the right answer. And I would do this. And I think I was growing my own education by this, and by now being able to look at how I was teaching in a different light. The educational side is amazing. I love learning. And I think very much so is that it was also a challenge for myself to go, can I keep doing that? Can I go back into that space? And it wasn't, and that's okay. But that's the positive, is that I realized that that's not where I should be playing anymore. It's a different playground, right? Is that I found a new playground and it's phenomenal. But it's the self-discovery and the self-discovery and the self-challenge and the self-awareness and the self-reflection that I've allowed myself to now be able to manage that and know why I'm doing it, because I'm a better version of myself today because of it.
Sounds like self-improvement or self-discovery or education or constant learning is a core value of yours.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I'm filled with tenacity. I love grabbing things and going and taking it and And, it's funny, I made a joke to Edward. I was like, and I thought it was tenacity. Apparently it was just ADHD. But I take something, I go with it, right? My courage that exists in myself to make changes is strong. And my adaptability, courage, and tenacity, I would put as my 3 top core values, because I've proven to myself that change is good, and that being okay with doing things that are going to shift is allowed. And whether people agree with it or not, that doesn't matter. But I agreed with what I was doing. And my wife's decision for us to up and move back to my home city was one of the greatest decisions that we've ever made. And I'm super blessed and thankful for that. My redirection in what I was doing professionally in hospitality, because of Edwin helping me open my eyes to see what was out there for me, and what was possible. And then for things to now open up as they have is beautiful. And I'm incredibly aware of everybody that was a part of this growth for me. And I'll never forget that, because if I was still where I was 2 years ago, I'd be lost. And I was able to pull myself out of that. And now I'm able to help other people find that within themselves, so that, going backwards is not a bad thing, right? Because when you start going forward and you realize how great forward looks for you, it's a very, very cool thing.
Yeah. It's the joy that you're emulating right now, and the energy I can feel from you, just being totally present in this moment and being present with your core values is awesome.
Thank you. Awesome. Love it. I think it's everything is within us. We just got to pull out the things that highlight us the best. And when we find that, right, the stuff that maybe isn't a highlight, that doesn't matter, right? You put, when I was doing this with a client, I said, when we got down to not important, important, and very important, in 60 values that were separated into 4 categories, and we're starting to shrink those down, I said, okay, great. So what we've discovered is the things that are not important to you, park them. Let's put those to the side, right? Those aren't your core values. You don't need those. You don't need to pay attention to them. Now take your important and your very important separately and drop them down into 5 of each. I was like, you got 38 things over here and 22 things over here. So drop those down to the top 5. And then we put those together and forgot what the separating factors of these core values were. Didn't matter where they lived in the work environment, right? Now take those 10 and drop them into 5. And when we did that, she was like, wow. And I said, what? She goes, these are my core values. I said, yeah, that's it. Like, we just discovered all of this with you in 3 hours. And watching the facial change when it was like this epiphany, she goes, aha, got it. I was like, great. Now go write your cover letter, which is already amazing. And write your resume again. Go and write it with the individual that you just discovered. And she was like, okay, right. So I get to see it this week, and I'm super excited about it.
What's one core value you'd like to turn the dial up on?
I think it's going to be adaptability. We're going through a lot in Canada. Our government has put a cap on international student visas for the next 2 years. They've split private and public school partnerships. So we don't have any new undergrads coming into our school this year, which I think is going to hurt hospitality drastically, when we're going to have a shrinkage of professionals to pull into our industry. So there's going to be, I'm going to tie the word pivot really into adaptability here. And I think this is where very strongly my company has done its reintroduction with a fully focused niche side of what I do, based upon what I've grown and learned in the last year, where I'm continuing to still have an opportunity for the next year and a bit to be a part of. So it's this adaptability of understanding where I need to introduce my company. And now the adaptation has started with me shifting how I'm looking at leadership and emotional intelligence. And it's now holding on to that and realizing that there's going to be pivot points that are going to come upon me that are just going to happen naturally, right? The professor world's going to slow down in a year and a half. And that's okay, right? That's okay. But God,
if you, yeah, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I'm sorry to cut you off there. Yeah,
if you were to rate your adaptability on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, what number would you put on it?
Well, I'd put it at 10 right now, but I need it to stay there.
Okay. What do you need to do to get it to stay there?
I need to keep my creativity in what I'm doing professionally with my company on the top of my list. Having more of that voice of leadership and of growth and of opportunity to exist. So I need to make sure that I'm paying, and again, it's going to tie back to education. I have to keep myself incredibly well versed in the development of people and the development of leadership and a continued study in emotional intelligence to help me keep that adaptability so that when those moments happen, it's not right, but I got this.
Yeah.
So, adaptability is the word is.
What's one commitment you want to make to yourself coming out of this conversation?
To keep myself with my blinders on, to keep my tunnel going in one direction. I'm achieving smarter things. I'm working smarter, not harder. And I'm excited to finally say that. And I got to hold on to that. I'm doing better things by staying on one road and then getting to a stoplight when it's done and being able to change directions, go down the next road. And I think I'm a month and a half in now to starting that. And I think if I can keep my horse blinders on, if you will, tunnel visioned in what success can come out of things as a whole, if I do things individually, will create greater growth for myself.
How are you going to know if you're veering off the path?
Oh, my wife reminds me.
You have an accountability partner then.
Absolutely.
That's perfect. Okay.
You know what? I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it. Where all of a sudden I open a new tab and I'm like, you don't need to do that right now. It has nothing to do with what you're doing right now. But it takes work. Like I have to just have a moment with myself where I'm like, oh yeah, right. I know exactly where I need to go with this, right? But I'm working hard on parking the thought and realize that I can do it later.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Christopher, you're incredible. Thank you for sharing this journey. Your thoughtfulness around, just how passionate you are and the level of education that you want to provide this industry is absolutely incredible, very inspiring. It's clear that you want to focus on the heart and the soul of the business because your heart and soul is in this.
It is.
And can't wait to follow your journey. Thank you so much for connecting with me today.
Thank you very much for having me. What an amazing day. This was, wow, that was powerful.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you're still on, I hope so. I know an hour's a long time, but we will be doing more of these. And if you want to connect, obviously, with Christopher and myself, we're on LinkedIn. Love to have a conversation with any of you. So we will see you very soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.